All right, ladies and gentlemen, we now move into the fourth session for this track, Spotlight Fireside Chat, demonstrating leadership in the digital era. John C. Maxwell, the famous American author, once said, "A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way." The rapid pace of change in technology in the digital era means that leaders must continue to embrace new technologies or run the risk of being left behind by the competition. Please join me in welcoming Arjun Singh, Managing Director, Asia, Yodlee Infotech Private Limited, the session chair. I'd like to request him please come forward and introduce our speaker for this session.
Hello. Can you hear me clearly? All of us in this room are blessed by the explosive growth of this industry that we are a part of, outsourcing, offshoring. We have jobs bigger than we could have imagined, good paychecks, and most importantly, the chance to learn and grow and contribute for our organizations globally. This is the serendipity of our lifestyles, of our lives, coinciding with this growth of offshoring and outsourcing. But all of us in GCCs, although we have grown to be into these big jobs, there is a pattern of experiences that we don't have. So as hosts and organizers of these events, we have been very keen to give us a chance to understand people who fight battles that we are not exposed to, who drive strategy, who compete, who drive P&Ls, who build businesses in the real world. So we have been trying for years to get speakers who will candidly talk to us about how they have driven companies. And I will say I am just absolutely delighted that our keynote for this conference is to have Gopal Vittal, who is the Chief Executive of Bharti Airtel, to come and talk to us about his last few years, how he has learned and dealt with the nuclear bomb that his competition dropped, which is the kind of situation that you rarely encounter, and the leadership lessons that Gopal has learned from this experience. I think for those of you who've been wise enough to stay in this room, this will be the event of all conferences, because we rarely get the chance to hear a candid CEO speak like this. Gopal has forbidden me from doing a, what did he call it, a pompous introduction. So on behalf of all those who have been with Gopal many years ago, so we started our career together at Brook Bond, and then we were at management school at IIM Cal together. And so since I can't talk about Gopal's achievements, I'll just say on behalf of your batchmates, how delighted we are, Gopal, with your success. Also how surprised we are. I don't know if all those years ago, we would have imagined such a glittering career. So at IIM, Gopal was certainly in his batch of 100 amongst those tipped to succeed in the top, not 10, 20, 50, top 50 for sure. There's no question about it. Gopal is also a very accomplished musician, and my last memories of Gopal on campus were, we just spent an entire night, Gopal and the band jamming through the night, and at like 5 a.m. he proposed to his girlfriend at the time, Irina, who's since then been his wife, and very accomplished in her own right. She was the most cerebral person on campus. We always assumed that she would also pick the most cerebral batchmate of hers as a partner, but she chose Gopal instead. But Gopal has gone on to make all of us proud. So Gopal, on behalf of this group here, may I say how overjoyed we are that you have agreed to come and share your honest perspectives as the CEO of Bharti Airtel. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Arjun. When Arjun asked me to come and speak, I just couldn't say no. We used to call him Dad on campus because he was much older than all of us, though he was a year junior to me. I've been in Airtel as CEO of the company now for 6 years, so this is my 7th year. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the last 3 years, which most of you would have read in the newspapers and heard about. 4 big changes to our context. The first change was really around pricing. Along came a competitor, as you know, and actually ran free services for over a year and a quarter, actually, year and a half. How many industries do you have a situation where you have a deep-pocketed competitor actually running free services for over a year and a half? This was backed by massive investments. Just to put it in perspective, we had invested about $40 to $45 billion of investments in the Indian marketplace. And in a period of about 4 years, this competitor put in close to $45 billion. So it wasn't just free services, it was a state-of-the-art network that matched this proposition of free services. The third thing that changed in the context was an incredible regulatory squeeze. About 10,000 crores of value was effectively transferred from the incumbent operators to this new operator through a whole series of regulatory moves that benefited this particular company. I'm not going into whether this was right or wrong. I'm just saying that was a fact. And the fourth context, which is true for telecom as an industry globally, was the rapid changes in technology. And the reason I raise these contexts is because I do see some similarity in the kind of context that the IT industry faces as well. The role of technology, I think, has begun to change globally, the role of telecom. Telecom has historically been a pipe, and this pipe is the backbone, if you like. But riding on this backbone is a whole series of services that have been launched in the B2C space and even in the B2B space. And businesses have been created, a lot of value has been created riding on this pipe. So 4 really big changes: massive predatory pricing, a very, very significant increase in investment, regulatory squeeze, and the changing context for the industry as a whole. In fact, what happened as a consequence of this is that we had 12 players in the market when I joined and took over as CEO. We're today left with 3 players. We had a bankruptcy of Airtel in rather dramatic circumstances, to so much so that people sort of came to the offices and roughed up their people. We had a bankruptcy of Reliance Communications. Telenor, which is a global multinational, sold out, just kind of handed over the keys and left to us. Tata's, again, sold out and left. We bought Tata's. There was Videocon, which went bankrupt and sold off. There's a small company called Ticona, which also went bankrupt. Loop Telecom, which is BPL Mobile, also went bankrupt. And the number 2 and number 3 player in the marketplace, which is Vodafone and Idea, decided to merge and become the number 1 player. So rather dramatic change in the last 2.5, 3 years. And I think in this period, I was telling Arjun earlier that we at Airtel are very proud that we've actually been able to hold our market share. We were about 4 years ago at 31% market share. We are pretty much at the same level. The number 2 and number 3 player together were 43. They've dropped down to about 32. So they've lost a lot of share. And then the new player has picked up share. So we've got to a situation now where they're more or less equal-sized players. I would say that there are 3 big implications from what we experienced. I think the first implication is a customer implication, which is the shift from what was essentially a model which was based on price plans and pricing, to a model that was based on actually being part of an ecosystem so that you could get more and more services to customers. And I think that's the shift that is happening in the industry. It's not that we made the shift, but that's the shift that's happening. The second big implication is the shift from being a backbone provider of connectivity to actually using the backbone as a key source of differentiation. Because at one level, you have just differentiation from an infrastructure play. At a second level, it's about efficiency, really compressing cost and so on. And the third level is really all about differentiation, which is really adding value back to customers. And the third implication is a very significant implication in our own mindsets from being an incumbent leader to being an attacker. And I think that is a very, very big shift in mindset as well. So I would kind of call out 4 big lessons that we've learned along the way, and these are lessons that at least I have sort of been very fortunate to learn. I think the first lesson, and I've seen this in other industries as well, I worked in consumer goods for about 20 years, I've seen this again in the same competitive context, is the power of anticipation. I think this is one thing that we did well, and we perhaps did this better than some of the other competitors. About 3.5 years ago, we got into a room with about 20 people, and we really plotted together everything that could happen. By the way, there was a lot of intelligence that we had picked from our partners, from our vendors, from the history in terms of what this particular competitor had done back in 2003. And so there was a rich amount of information that allowed us to really anticipate. Because I do believe that in a storm, you can't think. In a storm, the only thing you can do is bend and let the storm blow over. But it is important to act based on a very calm and methodical assessment of what's going on. And I think that was the power of anticipation that we had. And I would say, looking back over the last 30 months, 9 out of 10 things that we anticipated happened. The second big lesson was tone at the top. And I think this is very important. If you say you want to defend market share, you are going to lose market share. But if you say you're going to win market share, the best chance you have is either to win or at least hold market share. We are in an annuity business, and for us, holding on to our customers is perhaps the most important thing. So one of the things that through this tone, I think we were able to create a lot of positive energy in the company. At the DNA of Airtel is that it is a fighting machine. It has historically been a very aggressive band of brothers. And so to that extent, the tone at the top was very important. In fact, one of the most important things that we did was the target setting exercise. Just to give you some context, pricing fell to an extent, or has fallen to an extent, that a $35 billion market, industry size, is now around $23 billion. So $12 billion of revenue has evaporated from the industry. And we knew this was going to happen. So how do you set targets to your operating units where you historically set a target of revenue and profitability? And I think this was a shift that we made to say that we need to set targets based on what people can control. And so the 2 targets that we set was market share and cost, and not revenue and margin, because nobody knew what was going to happen to revenue. And I think this is part of the tone at the top, which is the confidence to say, we're going to weather this, but let's make sure that we do the right thing in order to come out of this well. The third big lesson I've learned is that finally about the customer. And you can get lost sometimes by being overly focused on the competitor. You have to be obsessed about the customer. Some of the things that we did, we were the first to actually step up our investments big time. We actually rolled out the 4G networks across the country. We were the first operator to do it. We put in $1 billion extra in 3 to 4 months, and believe me, it was an exchange of an SMS between me and the chairman to say, we need $1 billion more, we've got to go and do it now. So it wasn't the typical multinational approval process. In fact, to give you a measure of the capex that we put in, we historically would put about 17 to 20% of revenue. So for every 100 rupees of revenue that you earn, you put 20 rupees of capex into the business. Capex in our business is the product, unlike the IT industry where people is the product, or people is the biggest cost. Here it's capex. And this 20% of revenue went to close to 45%. So it was that scale of capex that we put behind the business. The second thing that we did was really put the emphasis back on customer experience. We made significant investments in really understanding what and how experience is shaped with the customer. And we're not where we need to be. We need to do a lot better in terms of network And for those of you who are Airtel customers, I'm sure you'll give me a lot of customer complaints. But the fact is that we have started putting a lot of investment in really making sure that the network works. Simple things like, if the speed is not equal to experience. You may get great speeds, but you may have a lousy experience simply because of where the content is cached or where it is being routed from, or the latency that you have in playing a game, or the fact that the bank servers are down when you're actually making an online payment. And all of this impacts the customer experience because we are remembered as a network only when we don't work. We're not remembered when we work. The third thing that we did in terms of focus on customers is actually create a different cadence for innovation. We created 2 subsidiaries. One was a subsidiary of content. We created a very different culture. It was a different compensation system. I did not allow anybody from Airtel to enter that business. So the CEO of that business only reported to me. And we have created the largest music service in India in the form of a Wink. We also put a video streaming service in that. We've got about 35 million monthly active customers there. We created a separate business of payments banks. We got a license there. So we've begun to do that, very focused on rural customers and migrant labor. And on the B2B space, we as a telecom company have 108 master switching stations all across the country. This was for legacy reasons. We have now consolidated all that, and our vision is to consolidate it into 12 mega data centers, which effectively make us the largest data center company in India. We already have 4 of these up and running. And this is helping us to actually get very serious into the data center space in the form of another subsidiary called Nextra. So many of these subsidiaries were created in order to insulate the business, create a different culture, and really focus the team to do what was right, despite the mothership facing a very big battle. And the last point I would make, and perhaps the most important point, is the culture. In the last 6 years, and we've done this quite quietly, we took out 2 layers in the organization. I believe that the more the supervisory layers, the more the slowness in decision-making, the less the agility. And really, my belief is that you need 1 supervisor. You don't need 5 supervisors. So you have to ruthlessly try and see how do you strip out layers so that you really have people who are adding value. The mix of talent has changed. We have reduced a few thousand people in the last 6 years through increased digitization. But we've invested back almost 1,000 people in technology, engineering, product, data science, and our content businesses. That's been a very big shift. And the way to attract this talent and hold on to this talent is very different from the traditional. Some of them want to leave in 2 to 3 years. They come from startups. They want to create wealth. So you have to figure out what is the proposition that you offer. And the proposition that we offer is that we have 300 million customers. We give you the kind of opportunity to work with scale problems that nobody else does. And I have personally invested almost, and this I really got wrong because we made the first shift to try and get to being a more digitally savvy company about 3.5 years ago. And we found that the organization architecture was not. So we hired a lot of good people, and they left within 6 to 12 months simply because we had not enabled them to succeed. There were legacy ways of working which did not enable them to work. So in the last 2 years, I spent almost 4 months studying 35 organizations and really looking at what is the way to set this up and being crystal clear on the jobs to be done. And through that clarity of jobs to be done, really cleaning up the organization to be very focused. And we then set up about 25 squads between product engineering, all the stuff that the internet companies do, product engineering and business. So there are 25 pods that are focused on 25 problems, and we're very clear what problems they're solving. And the last point on culture is a culture of partnerships. I think we are in an ecosystem business. We passionately believe that we can't do everything ourselves. If you want to offer a financial service, let's say you want to offer an insurance product to a customer bundled with a telco plan, there's an insurance company doing it better than you that can do it better than you at any point in time. If you want to offer a loan using the rich data that we have, again, there's a company out there that can do it. The 4 assets we have There's payments, which is really, we are the only one that can collect money from customers. We have a vast distribution system, 1.2 million retailers where people go and make top-ups and pay and transact with them. We have data, which is incredible. We have more data than Facebook on customers and what they do. We don't use it as a model for advertising, but that's a big asset that we have. And we have the network, which knows the location of the customer and where they are at any point in time. And the question for us is, how do you use these 4 assets to create an array of partnerships which can actually help the customer because you're solving problems and building services. And what we are now really keen on, which was my last point, on the cultural side, is really being the best company to go to for anybody who wants to partner. And the way that we have done this is to set up what's called a very digital framework, which is called TEAM. T is for transparent commercials, that's what a partner wants. E is for easy integration into our systems, that's what a partner wants. A is for accelerating the adoption, because they don't want to come and be partners with us and sell 3 of their products, so they want to sell millions. And M is for mutual growth. And it's a digital stack to enable this, so that's something that we will launch in the next 60 days. So those are the 4 lessons I've learned, which is really anticipation, tone, customer, not competitor, and finally, the real value of talent and culture. So that's what I thought I'd share. Thank you. Should I come there? Yeah.
Thank you, Gopal. That's really been a very concise speech, which has hit all the buttons that we were looking to hear about. Digital transformation, leadership, competitive strategy, and dealing with that kind of situation. So maybe I will ask you one more question and then throw it open to the audience. So my one question is on your personal leadership as it's evolved over the last few years. And one weakness that you think about in your own style and how you mitigate that.
So I think if I look at my weaknesses, I think I can be sometimes impulsive, right? And my problem-solving style, which I've now learned to talk to my people who work directly with me, is through conversations. That can sometimes confuse people because I can passionately argue both for and against the same point in a matter of minutes, right? And I'm trying to clarify my own mind. So these days when I do that, I warn them that I'm clarifying my mind, so I'm not taking any decision, not advocating a point of view, but I'm clarifying. Over time I've realized that people have different ways of problem solving. Some people write it down. For me, it's about through the process of conversation. So that is my second weakness, which is unless I articulate it, it can confuse people. But I do tend to be impulsive. And so I've learned now, when I'm impulsive, I don't take a decision. But I sometimes slip. So but I think, for me, what I value most is a hands-on style. I travel 2 to 3 days a week. I visit all our units. So every cycle, April to March, we have our annual plan. I make it a point. So between March 19th and April 9th, I visited all our 19 units across the country, gave the same presentation 19 times until you can wake me up in the middle of the morning and ask me, what's coming after chart 35. And this has to be done because it's important that people feel a sense of the same clarity. I value clarity. I don't like drift at all. And I think the most important thing is to have your door open so people can talk to you and be accessible to the last man on the ground. I feel a great sense of responsibility to the junior-most people in the company. And I think they depend on leadership to actually help the company, and they are, in a way, they are at the cold face, and so I feel a great sense of responsibility for them.
The buzz in the market, and I heard more about that today with Gopal, was how as he came into this business, he completely transformed it by being the man in the field. The old Unilever culture, not the ivory-towered boss in his office. He moved out of his large cubicle. He closed the lift that was only for him. He sat down outside. He traveled to every unit. And the impact of that on the people in the company was electric and so quick because he was there with the people in the front line. And it's such a cliche, but it's dramatic to see its impact. I mean, even those of us watching from the outside could see it. So Gopal, that other list of weaknesses I'd made just in case you want some help from those years ago, but you know, the page got full, so those have all gone away, is it?
Which one?
Okay. Okay, so with that, let me give the audience a chance to ask you questions. I'm sure there are many thoughts. But
I must add to what Arjun said. I think that Arjun was right because in my class of 140, I think I was 125. So, yeah.
All right. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tapsi from eBay. I'm a part of the strategy team, and one of my portfolios to advise clients on their digital transformation roadmap. And one of the recommendations that we make on a daily basis is develop a culture of innovation. And we always get it back from them that how. So I did catch some notes from your from the talk that you studied 25 different best-in-class firms which could do that. So can you delve a little more into that? That how can our clients, or how can clients actually build a culture of innovation within the firm?
Well, I think part of it is, you know, so here are a few things that at least I've learned, and one is incubation, I think, is very important before you scale. So Wink is a good example where we decided to incubate it very differently and completely separate from the mothership, with a completely different type of talent profile. And I think it was a crutch because, you know, no digital talent in their right senses would have joined Airtel 3 years ago. You know, and most digital talent don't want to join telcos. And the reason we set up Wink is that we wanted to attract good people. For the same reason, we've set up Airtel X Labs in Bangalore, which has been able to attract some really good people. But again, it's a crutch. It's a crutch because you're using a brand which, you know, you're sort of trying to embellish it in order to attract digital talent. But I think in some parts of the journey, this was important. So it was important. So you have to get the right people and you have to incubate to start with is one lesson. But very soon, you've got to put them at the center of the business. And I think this is the second big lesson. And I think this, my one regret is I didn't learn this fast enough. And maybe, you know, I can rationalize it by saying if the time was not right. But I would say perhaps we lost a year and a half in this process. We have now got, I would say, I mean, I am really proud of the kind of tech talent that we have in the company. Product is at the real heart of it. We were a consumer, so we were a technology company in the network side. And on sales and marketing, it was a traditional consumer goods type of company, which is distribution and traditional marketing. And I think the pivot that we're making is that we are a product company. So product has become at the heart. The chief product officer of Airtel also heads customer experience and is really, you know, the one person who goes across B2C and B2B. And he has got a team of about 76 product managers. You know, each product manager leads about 10 to 12, 15 engineers. So this is really at the heart of it. And I think what it's doing is it's actually reducing our cost at one side. So for example, you know, our costs of the call centers have fallen by almost 80% in the last 2.5 years. You know, we have dramatically simplified that part. We are beginning to actually find ways to partner. Some of our partners, some of the leading tech companies in the world are surprised at how quickly we are able to partner with them because we've got clean and robust APIs that will enable this partnership. So all of this, I think, has been enabled simply because of solid product teams, solid engineering teams, but it starts with clarity on what it is that you're doing and what problem you're solving. And I've often found that when you are unclear about that, then people are spinning around in, like tops. And the worst thing that any good talent faces is, I've spent a lot of time, but I've not created impact. Then you lose the talent. I mean, and money is not the reason that moves everything. You want impact. And we don't offer like massive wealth creation opportunities because, you know, we don't have the risk of a startup, and therefore we don't have the reward of a startup, right? But at the same time, what is it that you offer them? You offer them scale, and then you've got to clear the parts and simplify the organization So that the problems are clear, which is where we spend a lot of time. What are you trying to solve? And then let them go. And I think that's the second thing I would say.
You know, there was a lot of hype in the banking space that the fintechs are coming, it's going to be a David versus Goliath battle, and people were watching with bated breath. And then the number one learning became that it actually just became about partnerships, because the fintechs all needed access to the huge consumer base. So I think the way you frame those four pieces is just, it's a stunning opportunity to be able to come in and work with the data of 300 million consumers in an organized, structured, integrated way. You will not get a better chance than that in the world.
Yeah.
It's very powerful the way you have set that up. Chetan?
Hi, I'm Chetan from Allstate. Very inspiring, very insightful. Thank you for spending the time, and good to see you're ribbing each other. That made it even more exciting. How are you going to change the culture of Airtel? While you've done these subsidiaries and these smaller companies, Airtel, the mothership, will also need a...
No, we've folded all this back now. So this was all done, like I said, so crutches. This is all folded back. In fact, now, the chief product officer of Airtel actually has been telling me, drop this X Labs business. I mean, it's Airtel. And today, I mean, we've just hired a data product head, right? We just made him an offer, he accepted yesterday. He's a world-class talent. And we didn't have this role in Airtel for the last 25 years. And to me, I think this is one of the most, we have a data science head now, we have a data product head, and we've got the guy who runs the infrastructure and the platforms. These three, this pod, will actually do what we talked about, which is use the data to actually create, use the data as the layer by which you can create services. So the point I'm making is that this has to come at the center of the business, and we're now pulling it all back. So it's no longer just sort of some remote subsidiaries, but it's really coming right at the heart of Airtel.
So in some ways, you start small, start separate, but fairly quickly bring it back in, because the mothership has also got to make that part of their
Absolutely.
DNA.
In fact, I would say now we're seeing more attrition on Wink than in Airtel. And therefore, we want to pull it back now.
Right. Good, thank you.
Okay, guys, I've got
question
signals, so maybe we'll do a last question. We are
Yeah.
unfortunately out of time, so.
I have a question here.
Yeah.
So Gopal, you mentioned at the time of disruption, so your main focus was cost and the market share. But when freebies were given out and everything was free from the disruptor, don't you think cost directly, market share directly proportionate to cost? So if the cost is less, automatically market share will go up. So that's one question. And the second one is, as you said that it's a deep pocket player who invested for the 4G disruption. So when the 5G is going to hit India, that point in time, don't you think Airtel will be well positioned to grab that market, because already deep pocketed has been, lots of spend has been happened to that for 4G from that player?
I think we've always been at the forefront of these tech cycles, so we will be ready when 5G comes to India. I think it's still some time away. The spectrum that you need in 5G is a large amount of spectrum. It gives you low latency, so you need 100 megahertz, which costs today, by the way, 60,000 crores. There is no business case for it, so we need to wait for spectrum prices to fall. Second part on 5G is use cases are still very new and nascent. People talk about autonomous cars or robotic surgery, and then they struggle with a third use case. And both these things are coming not in India immediately, so it'll still take some time. So we'll be ready. We're waiting for the ecosystem to develop, tracking it very closely all around the world. On your first question, I think they don't have any relation to each other. I think your operating cost, you need to run a tight ship. And market share is ultimately about, what is the number of customers that you have and how much revenue they give you. I would say that by and large, we held on to all our quality customers. I think we are being seen in the marketplace as the brand for discerning customers, for customers who are looking for good quality and good experience. And I think that is exactly how we want to position ourselves.
So can I pull rank and just ask the last question, please? I'm dying to ask this. So fantastic, Gopal, and I think you sort of brought to life this saying that never let a good crisis go to waste.
It's a great point, yeah.
Right? I think that's what I was thinking as I was listening to you. What's the next big disruption opportunity in telecom in India? Is it going to be again price, or is it going to be technology? Is it going to be experience? What do you think is going to be?
I think it's going to be a combination of experiences, and secondly, the capacity to really serve customers with a service that is relevant for them, whether it's a content service, whether it's a financial service, and so on and so forth. And I think our entire effort is really around that. So we have, we are, in the next 7 days, we're going to launch a big program which will bring together content and financial services. But this will be the strategy for the company going forward, which is really bringing this together through a very simple program called Airtel Thanks, which we've just launched, but we are relaunching this in a week, and this will be the main program. So to me, I think it's a combination of both, and the only way you can do it, the second, which is services, is partnerships and deep understanding of customer through tech. So that's what I was saying.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gopal.
Thank you.
Well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank both Arjun and Gopal for that very candid session. I'd like to request Arjun to present a small token of our appreciation to Gopal. On behalf of Nasscom, we'd like to thank you for having taken time out and being a part of the session. And we also have a small token of our appreciation for you as well. Thank you so much for chairing the session.